Hello, it's Sean with TriState Water Works. How long will an irrigation system last? That's a very good question. Something people ask us all the time. Usually it's like, how long will these sprinkler heads last? So let's talk about the different components. There's kind of two systems or two parts of a sprinkler system. You have the electronic part that operates it and controls it. Then you have the plumbing parts. So let's start with the electrical part. First thing you have, which is your interface to the system, is an irrigation controller. And these last a fairly long time. They'll last 10, 15, 20 years. We've got ones in the field that we service that I know well over 20 years old. Their foe is electrical surges, lightning strikes, that sort of thing. That's going to shorten their lifespan. And the other foe is just the rapid speed of technology. So you might have a perfectly good controller, but you ought to consider upgrading it to a smart controller. And that's an investment that'll pay for itself in a short period of time. Generally speaking, about 2 years in the water savings will pay for a new controller if you don't have a smart controller. So these last a fairly long time, and they're pretty much catastrophic failure. When they go wrong, they just die. You'll know it. It's not like they usually just like one zone stops working. Happens very rarely. Usually the whole controller just dies. Then from the controller, we go to the wiring system. And wires, again, if they're underground and they're buried deep enough, they're going to last the lifetime of the system. So what do I mean by lifetime? Well, I would consider a lifetime 80 years, 100 years, somewhere in that range. And I think we're finally getting to the point where we actually have irrigation systems that have been out there that long. What can go wrong with the wire systems? If they're buried too shallow, they might get nicked by a lawn aerator, or if you're digging with a backhoe or a shovel, you may hit the wires. That can be problematic. Or if the splices were improper and they didn't use a gel-filled wire cap, you could get corrosion in there. But if wiring's done properly, it should last the lifetime of the system. Then the last thing the electricity goes through is the solenoid on top of the electric valve. Solenoids tend to last 20 years. They usually last the lifetime of the valve. There's other moving parts inside the valve that'll go out before the solenoid. Again, it's an electrical problem or electrical device, so surges, especially from lightning strikes, can cause those to short out. The valve itself, and valves are serviceable, so it's not like you have to replace the valve, but sometimes you need to repair them, and we do what we call a bonnet replacement, which replaces all the moving parts on the top of the valve, the solenoid, the little spring, the bonnet itself, and the important part, the part that goes bad the quickest, is the rubber diaphragm on the inside of the valve. Now this one's being stubborn and not wanting me to take it out. There we go. So this is a piece of rubber, and you know rubber deteriorates over time. If you take the valve apart and you're touching the rubber piece and your fingers turn all black, that means the rubber is shot, and that's going to cause the valve either to be stuck open or it may not open at all. But very repairable. And that's going to take anywhere from the range of 12 to 15 years, typically before you start seeing issues with the rubber diaphragm. So when we come to the plumbing parts, the first thing the water travels through after it leaves your house is the backflow. And this is a high maintenance item. There are a lot of moving parts in here. There are rubber O-rings, there are diaphragms, there are seals, there are springs, just a lot of moving parts. These valves can start leaking. We recommend taking these off in the wintertime. Freezing weather can crack them, break them, tear them up really quick. And this is a very expensive item. So when we winterize your system in the wintertime, we take these off and bring them in some place where they're warm so they don't freeze. Backflows, if they're taken care of properly, the overall body should last 20 years. The internals, you may have to rebuild somewhere in the range of 8 to 12 years that you'll have to repair it. And they are very repairable. I wouldn't recommend just replacing it because it's leaking out of the bottom. New set of O-rings and seals, and you'll be good to go. After it leaves the backflow, the next thing it goes into is the piping. Again, with pipes, as long as they're out of the sun and buried correctly, they'll last a lifetime. I was told by a PVC manufacturer that they thought their PVC pipe buried in the ground should last 100 years. I don't know that it's been tested that long. I don't know that it's been around for 100 years, but again, we're getting closer to that time period. We'll be able to tell. Sunlight is the big enemy of pipe, anything plastic. So if it's exposed, the UV rays will deteriorate it. But if it's buried properly and has the right amount of soil on top of it, it's going to be protected from the sun rays. Again, if you're digging with a backhoe or a shovel, they are prone to being hit and it can be cracked, but easily repaired. And I've had that question before where we've had an older system that maybe a new homeowner bought the house first time they've had it, and I'm like, well, we just feel like we need to put a whole new system in because the expenses can be large when you start looking at replacing all the sprinkler heads and valves and other things that do wear out. But piping is not one of those things that needs to be replaced. You can replace the other parts and rely on your existing piping system. Lastly, one more thing to go through here are sprinkler heads. So we get the water, we moved it through the piping and out to the sprinkler heads. How long do your sprinkler heads last? They'll last anywhere from 5 to 15 years. Again, based on the manufacturer and the quality of the sprinkler head. What usually goes first on these is the wiper seal around the base of the stem. When the stem pops up, you'll see a lot of water leaking from that area. And these are not repairable, so if it starts leaking down there, you just need to replace it. If you've got a rotary type sprinkler head that moves back and forth, those sometimes the gears or little plastic gears, they will wear out as well and the sprinkler head will get stuck. Now if you've got a sprinkler head that's moving really slowly, like the rest of them are rotating full turn in say 1 to 2 minutes, and you've got another one that takes 5 minutes for it to rotate, those should probably be replaced. Slow rotation tends to mess with the distribution uniformity and you'll get unevenness of wetting of the grass. So if it's moving too slow, you should replace it as well. Hope that answers your questions about how long an irrigation system lasts. It's been great talking to you today.